Princess Valari-san stood at the observation window of her diplomatic vessel, watching the stars drift past like scattered diamonds. She was the third daughter of Emperor San, ruler of the Valorian Empire, and she carried herself with the grace expected of royalty. Her silver skin caught the light of distant suns, and her violet eyes reflected centuries of noble breeding. Today should have been a proud moment. She was traveling to Nexus Prime to represent her father at the most important alliance negotiations in a generation. The humans wanted partnership with the Valorian Empire, and her father had sent her to evaluate their worthiness. But her pride had turned to irritation the moment she received the message from Earth's government. They were sending a human security escort, one single human to join her elite protection team. It was meant as a gesture of partnership, a symbol of trust between their species. To Valari, it felt like an insult. She had studied humans, of course. Every educated Valorian knew about them. They came from a harsh world called Earth, a planet of extreme temperatures, violent weather, and dangerous predators. They had survived there for thousands of years before discovering space travel. Some called them impressive for this. Valari called them lucky. Humans were small compared to most galactic species. They lacked the natural armor of the Krethians, the telepathic abilities of the Mindari, or the enhanced strength of her own people. They lived short lives and broke easily. What could one human possibly add to her security? The door to the observation deck slid open, and Captain Rin entered. He was her head of security, a veteran of 3 wars, with scars across his face that told stories of battles survived. He bowed his head respectfully. "Your Highness, the human escort has arrived. He is waiting in the reception hall." Valari sighed. "Very well. Let us meet this gift from Earth." She walked through the gleaming corridors of her ship, her attendants following at a respectful distance. The vessel was a masterpiece of Valorian engineering, with walls that shifted color based on the mood of its occupants and floors that adjusted temperature for comfort. It was a ship worthy of royalty. The human waiting in the reception hall was not worthy of anything. As far as Valari could tell, he was average height for his species, with brown hair cut short and eyes the color of earth after rain. He wore simple dark clothing with no visible weapons. His face was plain, forgettable, the kind of face you would pass on a crowded street without a second glance. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his posture relaxed but not lazy. This was their protector? This unremarkable creature? "Princess Valari-san," he said, and his voice was soft, almost gentle. "I am Danny Harris, assigned by Earth's Diplomatic Security Division. Thank you for allowing me aboard your vessel." Valari forced a polite smile. "Welcome, Mr. Harris. I trust your journey was comfortable." "It was. Thank you." Silence followed. He did not try to fill it with flattery or boasts about his qualifications. He simply stood there, watching her with those quiet eyes. Captain Rin stepped forward, towering over the human by nearly 2 feet. "I am Captain Rin, head of the Princess's security detail. You will report to me during this mission." "Understood," Danny said. "I should tell you plainly," Rin continued, "that I do not see the need for your presence. My team is more than capable of protecting Her Highness. You are here as a political gesture, nothing more." Valari expected anger, or at least defensiveness. Instead, Danny simply nodded. "I understand, Captain. I will try to stay out of your way." Rin looked almost disappointed by the lack of resistance. He clearly wanted an argument, something to justify his dismissal of the human. But Danny gave him nothing. Later that evening, Valari spoke with her attendants in her private chambers. The walls glowed a soft blue, reflecting her mood of mild annoyance. "Did you see him?" she said. "That is what humanity sends to protect royalty. A man who looks like he could not win a fight against a determined child." Her chief attendant, an elderly Valarian woman named Sotha, poured tea with practiced grace. "Perhaps the humans have different standards, Your Highness." "Lower standards, clearly." Valari shook her head. "This alliance negotiation is crucial for both our peoples. You would think they would send their best." "Perhaps they did," Sotha said quietly. Valari laughed. "Then humanity is in worse shape than we believed." What Valari did not know was that Danny Harris could hear every word. Human hearing was not as sharp as Valorian hearing, but the ship's ventilation system carried sound in ways its designers had not intended. Danny stood in his small assigned quarters, listening, and his expression did not change. He had heard worse. Much worse. In his years of service, he had been dismissed by generals, mocked by politicians, and underestimated by enemies who later regretted it deeply. Words did not bother him anymore. Only actions mattered. He spent the next 3 hours walking the ship. He moved quietly, drawing no attention, looking like a man who was simply lost and wandering. But his eyes missed nothing. He noted the placement of every security camera, the response time of guards at each checkpoint, the blind spots where someone could move unseen. He counted the crew members and memorized their faces. He observed their patterns, who talked to whom, who avoided eye contact with others. He tested doors that should have been locked and found 2 that were not. He mapped emergency exits and calculated escape routes from every major room by midnight. He knew the ship better than most of its crew, and he had noticed something troubling. One crew member, a maintenance technician with nervous eyes, kept visiting parts of the ship he had no reason to visit. He checked corners where no equipment existed. He lingered near the princess's usual walking routes. When security guards passed, he looked away too quickly. Danny watched him for an hour, staying hidden in the shadows that the ship's elegant lighting created. The technician never noticed him. Few people ever did. Danny did not report his concerns. Not yet. Captain Rin had made clear that human observations were not welcome. And Danny had learned long ago that speaking too soon often meant not being heard at all. So he watched. He waited. And he prepared. Because Danny Harris had not survived 15 years in Special Forces by being impressive. He had survived by being patient, by being invisible, and by being ready when everyone else was not. The princess thought he was useless. Her security chief thought he was a joke. The crew did not even remember his name. That was exactly how Danny wanted it. 3 days into the journey, Princess Valari was forced to include Danny Harris in her security briefings. It was part of the Alliance Protocol, a requirement that Earth's government had insisted upon. She did not have to like it, but she had to follow it. The briefing room was large and circular, with holographic displays showing the ship's position and the route to Nexus Prime. Captain Rin stood at the center, his deep voice filling the space as he explained the security arrangements for the princess's arrival at the Galactic Assembly. Danny sat in the corner, silent and still. Valari directed all her questions to Rin, as if the human was not even present. The other Valorian guards followed her example. For an hour, no one looked at Danny. No one spoke to him. No one acknowledged that he existed. When the briefing ended, Danny raised his hand. The room fell silent. Valari turned to look at him, her expression somewhere between surprise and annoyance. "Yes, Mr. Harris?" she said. "I have a suggestion," Danny said. His voice was calm, neither loud nor soft. "The princess currently takes the same route through the ship every day. Same corridors, same times. I would recommend varying her movements. Unpredictability is good security." Captain Rin laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Human paranoia," he said. "This is a Valorian diplomatic vessel, Mr. Harris, not some primitive Earth transport. Every crew member has been vetted. Every corner is monitored. There is no threat here." "Routines create vulnerability," Danny said. If someone is watching, patterns make their job easier. And who would be watching? Rin demanded. We are in the safest ship in the sector, surrounded by the finest security team in the Empire. Your concern is noted and dismissed. Danny nodded slowly. Understood. He did not argue. He did not push. He simply accepted the dismissal and returned to his silence. Valari watched him with curiosity she did not want to feel. Most people, when their advice was rejected so publicly, showed some emotion. Anger, embarrassment, frustration. Danny showed nothing. His face was as blank as a still pond dot after the briefing. Ambassador Claire Dawson found Danny in a quiet corridor. She was the human diplomat assigned to facilitate the alliance talks, a woman with sharp eyes and silver hair. She had been watching Danny since he came aboard. That was uncomfortable, she said. I have had worse meetings, Danny replied. I need you to understand something, Claire said, her voice low. This assignment matters. Humanity's reputation is at stake. The Valorians think we are primitive, and every mistake you make will confirm that belief. Please, do not cause incidents. Danny met her eyes. I am not here to cause incidents, Ambassador. I am here to keep the princess alive. She has an entire security team for that. Then I am sure they will succeed, and I will have a very boring trip. Claire studied him for a long moment. She had read his file before the mission. The parts that were not classified painted a picture of a competent but unremarkable soldier. The classified parts told a different story entirely. She wondered if the Valorians had any idea what was really sitting quietly in the corner of their briefing room. Just be careful, she said finally, and walked away. That night, Danny continued his investigation. He had identified 3 crew members whose records did not match their behavior. They had been assigned to the ship only 2 weeks before departure, replacing crew members who had suddenly fallen ill. Their documentation was correct, but something felt wrong. Danny had learned to trust that feeling. It had saved his life more times than he could count. He tried once more to report his concerns. He found Captain Rin in the security office, reviewing duty schedules on a glowing display. Captain, I have noticed some irregularities with recent crew replacements, Danny said. 3 technicians were added just before departure. Their work patterns are unusual. Rin did not look up from his display. Unusual how? They spend time in areas unrelated to their duties. They avoid security checkpoints when possible. One of them has been observing the princess's daily movements. Now Rin looked up, but his expression was not concerned. It was annoyed. Mr. Harris, every crew member on this ship has been thoroughly vetted by Valorian intelligence. Our background checks are far more advanced than anything your people possess. If there was a threat among the crew, we would know. I am only suggesting additional scrutiny, Danny said. And I am telling you that your suggestions are not needed. Rin stood, using his full height to tower over the human. You are here as a symbol, nothing more. Your job is to stand quietly and look like you belong. Leave the actual security work to professionals. Danny said nothing. There was no point. Rin had made his decision, and no amount of evidence would change his mind until something forced him to change it. That something came the next morning. Valari was walking to her daily briefing when an explosion rocked the ship. It was small, contained to a maintenance corridor on Deck 7. The same corridor she would have walked through if she had not been running late that morning. Alarms filled the air. Security teams rushed to the scene. Valari was escorted to her chambers while the ship went into lockdown. The official report called it mechanical failure. A power coupling had overloaded, causing a minor explosion. No one was hurt. The timing was unfortunate, but coincidental. Danny read the report and knew it was wrong. He had walked that corridor the night before. The power coupling had been functioning perfectly. Someone had sabotaged it, timed it to explode when the princess would be passing. She had survived only because she had been delayed by a communication from her father. Luck. Pure luck. Danny returned to his quarters and began preparing. He cleaned and checked his weapons. Small devices that the Valorians had dismissed as primitive, but that had served him well for 15 years. He reviewed his mental map of the ship, identifying choke points where attackers might try to trap their target. He calculated how long it would take him to reach the princess from any point on the vessel. Then he sat in the darkness and waited. Later that night, his patience was rewarded. He intercepted a fragment of an encrypted transmission, bounced off a secondary communication array that the crew probably did not even remember existed. He could not decode the full message, but he recognized the structure. He had seen it before in classified briefings about Galactic criminal networks. Thought it was an assassination contract. The target was Princess Valari-san. The payment was large enough to buy a small planet, and the deadline was approaching fast. Danny stared at the fragment of code on his small screen. He now knew for certain what he had suspected since boarding this ship. Someone wanted the princess dead, and they had placed their killers among her own crew. The question was not if they would strike. The question was when Dot and Danny Harris would be ready. The diplomatic vessel entered a communication dead zone 12 hours before reaching Nexus Prime. It was a natural phenomenon, a region of space where solar radiation disrupted all long-range signals. For the next 6 hours, they would be completely cut off from the outside galaxy. Danny knew this was when the assassins would strike. He requested a private meeting with Princess Valari. Her attendants were surprised by the request, and Captain Rin tried to deny it. But the Alliance Protocol gave Danny certain rights. One of them was direct access to the person he was assigned to protect. Valari received him in her private study, a room filled with books and artifacts from across the Valorian Empire. She sat behind a desk made of wood from a tree that no longer existed, watching him with eyes that mixed curiosity with impatience. "You have 5 minutes, Mr. Harris," she said. "I have preparations to complete before we arrive at Nexus Prime." Danny did not waste time with politeness. "Your Highness, there will be an attempt on your life within the next 6 hours. The attackers are already aboard this ship, disguised as crew members. I believe there are at least 10 of them, possibly more." Valari stared at him. For a moment, something like fear flickered in her violet eyes. Then it was replaced by something harder. "That is a serious accusation," she said coldly. "You are suggesting that my own people would betray me." "I am suggesting that enemies have infiltrated your crew. They sabotaged the power coupling that exploded yesterday. They have been observing your movements for days. And they chose to act now because we are in a dead zone where no one can call for help. The explosion was mechanical failure." Captain Rin investigated personally. Captain Rin investigated what the saboteurs wanted him to find. "They are professionals, Your Highness. They would not leave obvious evidence." Valari stood, her silver skin flushing with anger. "You come into my study and tell me that my security is compromised, that my crew cannot be trusted, that my captain is incompetent. On what evidence? Human intuition? 15 years of experience keeping people alive," Danny said. His voice remained calm, but there was weight behind it now. "I have seen assassination attempts before, Your Highness. I know what they look like in the hours before they happen. The small signs, the careful positioning, the quiet preparations. This ship has all of them, and why should I trust you? You are a stranger, a human. For all I know, you are the threat." Danny met her eyes without flinching. "If I wanted you dead, Your Highness, you would already be dead. I have had dozens of opportunities since boarding this vessel. The fact that you are still breathing should tell you something about my intentions." The words hung in the air between them. Valari wanted to dismiss him, to call for her guards and have this paranoid human removed from her sight. But something stopped her. Something in his eyes and the absolute certainty of his voice made her hesitate. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "One thing. Allow me to stay within arm's reach of you until we dock at Nexus Prime. If I'm wrong, you will have lost nothing but a few hours of privacy. If I am right, I might be able to keep you alive." Captain Rin burst into the room before she could answer. Someone had told him about the meeting. "Your Highness, you should not be alone with this human. Whatever he has told you is likely fantasy. Humans are known for their paranoia and overactive imaginations. He believes there are assassins aboard," Valari said. Rin laughed. "Of course he does. He needs to justify his presence somehow. Your Highness, I assure you, there is no threat. My team has complete control of this vessel." Valari looked between the two of them. The tall, confident Valorian captain who had protected her family for decades. The quiet, unremarkable human who had barely spoken 10 words since boarding her ship thought she did not know why she made the decision she made. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the small voice in her mind that remembered the explosion. The lucky timing that had saved her life. "Mr. Harris will remain with me until we reach Nexus Prime," she said. Rin's face showed shock, then anger. "Your Highness, this is highly irregular. It is my decision, Captain. You may add additional guards if you wish, but the human stays." Rin looked like he wanted to argue further, but centuries of discipline stopped him. He bowed stiffly and left the room. Danny allowed himself a small breath of relief. It was the first emotion he had shown since coming aboard. The hours passed slowly. Valari tried to continue her work, reviewing briefing documents and practicing her speech for the Galactic Assembly. Danny stood near the door, watching, waiting. His body relaxed, but his eyes never stilled. As the 6th hour approached, Valari began to feel foolish. Nothing had happened. The ship was quiet. Her guards patrolled the corridors as always. Perhaps the human really was paranoid. "It seems your assassins are running late," she said, not hiding her mockery. Danny did not respond. His head had tilted slightly, like a dog hearing a distant sound. "Mr. Harris?" Quiet. The command was so unexpected that Valari obeyed without thinking. She watched as Danny moved to the door, pressing his ear against the metal. Then the lights went out. Total darkness fell over the room. Valari gasped, reaching for her desk to steady herself. Emergency lighting should have activated immediately, but nothing happened. The ship was completely dark. "Stay behind me," Danny said. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it now. "What is happening?" "They have started." Valari heard sounds in the darkness. Distant shouts. The hiss of doors opening. Footsteps running in corridors that should have been guarded. And then, closer, the soft click of a weapon being on. The door to her study exploded inward. A figure rushed through, moving fast, a blade gleaming in the faint starlight from the windows. Valorian trained, Valari could tell. Military-grade. Danny moved faster. He intercepted the attacker in the darkness, his hands finding the assassin's arm with perfect accuracy. There was a wet crack, then a scream, then the sound of a body hitting the floor. "We need to move," Danny said. He grabbed Valari's hand, his grip firm but not painful. "Stay close. Do not let go. Do not hesitate. Do exactly what I say." Valari's heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking, but she nodded in the darkness, trusting this human she had dismissed as useless. "I am ready," she said. Danny pulled her into the corridor, into the darkness, into the storm that was only beginning. The corridor was completely dark. Emergency systems that should have activated within seconds remained dead. Somewhere in the ship, someone had disabled every backup, every failsafe, every light source. Danny moved through the blackness like he had been born in it. His hand held Valari's wrist, guiding her around corners she could not see, past obstacles she would have crashed into. She had never felt so helpless in her life. "How can you see?" she whispered. "I cannot," Danny replied. "I memorized the ship." Behind them, footsteps echoed. Multiple sets, moving fast and coordinated. The assassins were hunting. Danny stopped suddenly, pulling Valari against a wall. She held her breath, listening. 3 figures passed them in the darkness, so close she could feel the air move. They did not see them. They did not even slow down. When they were gone, Danny moved again, pulling her down a side passage she had never noticed. "Your guards were sent to the wrong locations," he said quietly. "False alarms triggered on decks 3, 7, and 12. By the time they realize the truth, we need to be somewhere safe." "Where is safe?" "Nowhere. But some places are better than others." They reached a junction, and Danny stopped. Valari heard him do something to the wall panel, his fingers moving with practiced speed. A moment later, a single emergency light flickered to life above them, dim but enough to see Dot, and she saw them. 3 assassins stood at the far end of the corridor. Thalorian males, tall and strong, wearing the uniforms of maintenance technicians. But the weapons in their hands were not maintenance tools. They were military blades, designed for silent killing. "There," one of them said, pointing. They charged. Danny pushed Valari behind him and moved forward to meet them. His movements were nothing like the careful, hesitant steps of the man she had dismissed in the briefing room. He flowed like water, like shadow, like something that had been trained to kill since before she was born. The first assassin swung his blade in a wide arc. Danny ducked under it, stepped inside the man's reach, and struck his throat with the edge of his hand. The assassin crumpled, choking. The second assassin was faster, adjusting his attack. His blade caught Danny's arm, cutting through fabric and into flesh. Danny did not even flinch. He grabbed the assassin's wrist, twisted, and broke it. The blade clattered to the floor. A knee to the stomach, an elbow to the temple, and the second assassin fell. The third assassin hesitated. That hesitation cost him everything. Danny closed the distance in a single step, his hand finding the precise point on the assassin's neck that controlled consciousness. The man's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. 3 attackers. 5 seconds. Danny picked up one of the fallen blades and turned back to Valari. Blood dripped from his wounded arm, but his expression had not changed. He was still calm, still focused. "We need to keep moving," he said. They ran. Through corridors that seemed to shift and change in the darkness, past rooms that should have been safe, but were not. Twice more, assassins found them. Twice more, Danny put them down with brutal efficiency that left Valari unable to speak. He was injured now. The cut on his arm was deep, and the plasma graze had burned across his shoulder from an assassin who had managed to fire before dying. Any Valorian would have been slowed by such wounds. Danny moved as if he did not feel them at all. During a brief moment of safety in a storage room, Valari finally found her voice. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this? The alliance is not signed yet. Humanity owes me nothing. If I die, your people could probably negotiate a better deal with my successor." Danny was checking the corridor through a crack in the door. He answered without looking at her. "Because you needed help. That is not a reason. That is not politics. That is not strategy." "No," Danny agreed. "It is not." Valari stared at his back, at the blood soaking through his shirt, at the way he stood between her and the door without hesitation or complaint. "You are very strange, Danny Harris. I have been told that before." The sound of footsteps interrupted them. Many footsteps, converging from multiple directions. The assassins had found them again, and this time they were not making mistakes. Danny led her out of the storage room and down a narrow maintenance shaft that the assassins would not expect. But when they emerged, they found themselves in a dead end. The corridor ahead led only to the escape pod bay, and between them and the pod stood the remaining assassins. 4 of them. The last 4 they spread out, blocking every possible escape route. Their leader, a scarred Valorian with cold eyes, smiled when he saw Danny's wounds. "You fight well for a human," he said. "But you are bleeding. You are tired. And there are 4 of us. Surrender the princess, and we will make your death quick." Danny positioned himself in front of Valari. His breathing was heavier now, the toll of combat finally showing. "Run," he said to her. "The escape pod behind us. Get inside and launch. I will hold them here." Valari's hands clenched into fists. "No, Your Highness, this is not a debate." I said no. She stepped forward, standing beside him instead of behind him. "I will not flee while someone dies for me. That is not who I am." Danny looked at her. For the first time since they met, something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Then stay close," he said. "And when I tell you to move, move." The assassins attacked. What followed was the longest 30 seconds of Valari's life. Danny fought like nothing she had ever seen, using every surface, every shadow, every piece of the environment as a weapon. He threw one assassin into another. He used the low gravity near the escape pods to flip over a blade strike. He found pressure points that Valari had never known existed, but 4 against 1, wounded and exhausted, was too much for anyone. A blade cut across his back. A fist caught his face. He stumbled, and for one terrible moment, Valari thought he would fall. Then she saw his eyes. They were not the eyes of a man who was losing. They were the eyes of a man who was waiting. The leader of the assassins raised his blade for the killing blow. And Danny moved. He had been playing weak, drawing them close. Now he struck with everything he had left. 3 precise blows, faster than Valari's eyes could follow. The leader fell. Danny spun, catching the last assassin's arm, breaking it, then breaking his neck with a single sharp twist. Silence. The emergency lights flickered fully to life, bathing the corridor in pale blue illumination. Valari looked around her. 12 bodies. Some unconscious, some dead, all neutralized by a single human who had been dismissed as useless. Danny stood in the center of the carnage, swaying slightly. His wounds were severe. His face was pale from blood loss. But he was still standing, still breathing, still positioned between her and any possible threat. "Are you hurt, Your Highness?" he asked. Valari could not answer. She could only stare at this ordinary-looking man who had just saved her life by doing the impossible. Then his eyes rolled back, and Danny Harris finally collapsed. Valari knelt beside Danny's unconscious body, pressing her hands against his worst wound to slow the bleeding. His blood was red, so different from the silver blue of Valorian blood, and it seemed too bright against his pale skin. "Help!" she screamed. "Someone help!" The lights had returned, and with them, the ship's communication systems. Within minutes, her guards arrived. Captain Rin was among them, his face showing shock at the scene before him. 12 assassins lay scattered across the corridor, defeated by a single human. "Medical team now," Rin commanded. Then, quieter, to Valari. "Your Highness, are you injured?" "I am fine," she said. Her voice was shaking. "He protected me. He saved my life." "Make sure he lives, Captain." "That is an order." The Valorian physicians had never treated a human before. Their medical technology was advanced, but human physiology was different in ways that confused their scanners. They worked through the night, sealing wounds, replacing lost blood, monitoring vital signs they did not fully understand. When the ship docked at Nexus Prime the next morning, Danny was still unconscious but stable. Valari had not left the medical bay. The investigation into the assassination attempt moved quickly. The evidence that Danny had gathered, combined with interrogation of the surviving assassins, revealed a truth that shook the Valorian delegation to its core. The attack had been ordered by Prince Keth's-son, Valari's own brother. Keth was fourth in line for the throne, ambitious and hungry for power. He had opposed the human alliance from the beginning, seeing humanity as a threat to Valorian dominance. By killing Valari and blaming human incompetence, he had planned to destroy both his rival and the alliance in a single stroke. When Emperor San received the report, his response was swift and without mercy. Keth was arrested, stripped of his titles, and sentenced to exile on a prison world at the edge of the empire. He would never threaten his family again. Captain Ren came to Valari with his resignation letter the day after they arrived. "I failed you, Your Highness," he said. His proud posture was gone, replaced by the bent shoulders of a man facing his greatest shame. "I dismissed the warnings. I ignored the threat. If not for the human, you would be dead." Valari took the letter and read it slowly. Then she tore it in half. "You made a mistake, Captain. A serious one. But you have served my family faithfully for 30 years, and I will not throw that away because of one failure." She met his eyes. "Learn from this. Never dismiss a warning because of where it comes from. The truth does not care about rank or species." Rin bowed deeply. "I will remember, Your Highness. I swear it." Danny woke 3 days after the attack. The first thing he saw was Valari sitting beside his bed, reading from a small tablet. "Your Highness," he said. His voice was rough from disuse. "You should not be here. There are negotiations to attend." Valari set down her tablet. "The negotiations can wait." The Galactic Assembly was quite understanding when they learned that someone tried to murder me. Danny tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain flared through his body, and he fell back against the bed. "The physicians say you should not move for at least another week," Valari said. "Your species is remarkably fragile. It is amazing you survived at all. Stubbornness runs in my family." For a moment there was silence. Then Valari spoke again, her voice softer than Danny had ever heard it. "I owe you an apology, Mr. Harris. I dismissed you. I mocked you. I treated you as less than you were. And despite all of that, you nearly died to protect me." She paused. "That is a debt I do not know how to repay." Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held no anger, no resentment. "You could not have known," he said. "Humans do not look like warriors. We are small and soft and break easily. Most species see us and think we are weak. They are not wrong, exactly. We are weak compared to many others." He managed a small smile. "We have just learned to be dangerous anyway." Valari nodded slowly. "I am beginning to understand that." The alliance negotiations resumed a week later, with Valari leading the Valorian delegation. The Galactic Assembly had been watching the situation closely, and rumors about the assassination attempt had spread to every corner of civilized space. When Valari rose to address the assembly, she did not begin with a prepared speech about trade routes and mutual defense. Instead, she told a story. She told them about a quiet human who sat in the corner of meetings and said nothing. About a man who was mocked and dismissed by everyone around him. About how that man had watched and waited and prepared, while everyone else was blind to the danger. She told them about 12 assassins, trained killers armed with advanced weapons, sent to murder her in the darkness. And about how a single human, armed with nothing but his hands and his will, had stopped them all. "We thought humans were primitive," she said, her voice carrying across the great hall. "We thought they were useful only for labor, for menial tasks beneath our dignity. We were wrong." She paused, letting the words settle. "Humans are quiet about their strength. They do not boast. They do not display their power for others to admire. But when it matters, when lives are at stake, they become something more than they appear. I have seen it with my own eyes. She looked toward the gallery where Danny sat, still recovering, but insisting on attending. The Human Alliance has my full support, and I would recommend that every species in this assembly think carefully before underestimating what humanity can do. After the speech, Ambassador Claire Dawson found Danny in a quiet corridor. That was quite an endorsement, she said. You have single-handedly changed how half the galaxy sees humanity. Danny shrugged, then winced at the pain the movement caused. I was just doing my job. Some job. Claire smiled. The princess has requested that you remain as her permanent security liaison. Earth's government has approved. If you are interested. Danny thought about it. The quiet princess who had learned to see past appearances. The chance to represent humanity among the stars. The work that still needed to be done. I am interested, he said. The next day, Danny and Valari walked into the assembly hall together for the final signing of the Alliance Treaty. Delegates from 100 worlds watched as the Valorian princess entered side by side with an unremarkable-looking human, treating him not as a servant or a symbol, but as an equal. Some of the delegates whispered among themselves. They had heard the stories, but seeing it was different. This small, plain human had defeated 12 assassins with his bare hands. He had nearly died for a princess who had shown him nothing but contempt. Perhaps they thought they had misjudged humanity. Perhaps there was more to these strange creatures from Earth than anyone, and realized as they took their seats for the ceremony. Valari leaned toward Danny. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything? Danny nodded, his eyes already scanning the room for threats, watching the shadows preparing for dangers that might never come. You are welcome, Valari, he said. She smiled. He had finally used her name instead of her title. It felt like the beginning of something new. Across the galaxy, in palaces and ships and colonies too numerous to count, the story of the human and the princess began to spread. It was a story about prejudice and courage, about hidden strength and earned respect. It was a story that would change how the universe saw humanity. But for Danny Harris, it was just another day. Another person protected. Another job. He would not have wanted it any other way.